Alright, let's give this a shot. So, I listened to the Perfect Element 1 anniversary mix. Literally just, like, I finished the album maybe about 10-15 minutes ago. Gave myself a little breather to just take it in before figuring out even what to say about it. I don't even know if doing a brief, quick review, or, I mean, I doubt this is going to be even remotely quick, even if I try to go into my, I'm just right now, like, so I don't know if it's probably better for me to like actually plan this out, prepare this or not, or just give out my instant thoughts, because honestly I think it might be also good to like have a just to really express how I felt from my first experience of this new mix. I will definitely say that from everything that I've heard, I am very much more pleased with this mix than I am displeased. Because obviously when hearing someone else's mix, you're not expected to, you know, I guess agree or, you know, be satisfied with every single aspect. But I will say that there were many things in this mix that I was not expecting to hear at the same time. I knew that because it was going to be more clear, there was probably going to be some new things that I would hear that I'm not familiar with or not used to hearing from the first time. So there's going to be some parts where I may feel indifferent about some sections. If I won't go into detail about how some parts I feel about, but I will say the highlight of this mix is the heavy raw aggression that they bring out for the heavy sections. So already looking at tracks like Used, Idioglosia, King of Loss, and even the Perfect Element, the closing track. Some of the parts in the original mix, when you listen to those sections, you feel like that there's something missing. There's something there's that aggressive side. There could be more punch to it. It's not as much as there as you would want it to be, and that is one of the things that, you know, held me back from, I guess, not from giving it like not giving it a perfect score or anything like that. I still do anyways, regardless, just because this album has impacted me in ways that no other album has. So I couldn't not give it a perfect score based on that. But reliving those moments, finally getting to hear those sections the way that I wanted to hear them, it honestly, like, a lot of the parts that had made me cry, you know, listening to it, I cried again. Yeah, it was bound to happen. I'm in love with this album. It's, you know, it's just, I've waited years for this moment to happen, and it finally did, and I will definitely say that I'm glad that it did, that this is what it was. A part of me was like almost afraid at this point that I was going to be like, realize that maybe I was become too attached to the original recording after, you know, being a fan of the original thing for basically half the time it's even been out. So it's been 20 years now, and I've been a fan of the band since probably 2009, and I think this album in particular, I guess I've been a fan of this album for maybe 10 to 11 years. So yeah, a good half the time. And man, just thinking about all of that now, it's crazy. So I've had lots of time to take in, you know, the original recording of this album, to really just get it in from start to finish, recognizing the soundscapes, the composition, and everything. And now listening to it with the new mix, as I said before, it's, you know, it's like I'm listening to almost like a different album. There's many parts that Pontus Lindmark, I'm just gonna say that's the name of the producer who worked on this mix. Pontus, the way that he made a certain approach with some sections, I was just like, whoa, this is different, not what I expected, you know, like more than just how he was able to bring certain things that were hidden from the original mix, but there was also other sections that were where he just kind of made a different approach, like applied different sounds, which I thought was really interesting and kind of took me off guard a little bit at first, as you would probably imagine from something, you know, my dear original album, now they changed it and it's not the same anymore. So, I mean, when you get a new mix, you know, the producer is going to want to try new things, you know, make it, you know, a unique experience. And I will definitely say that this was a very unique experience, quite as unique as even compared to listening to Remedy Lane's remix from a few years ago. That one was certainly something else. But nonetheless, I'm very impressed with what Pontus did with this album, and I am just like very, very thankful that this day finally came, that I was able to listen to it like this. And I'm at the point now where I feel like I may not want to give it a listen until I receive my limited yellow vinyl copy, because yeah, I want to like give myself a bit of time to just take a breather from the album, revisit it when I'm ready, and I think when the time does come that I do receive my vinyl copy, that will be the right time. And it'll be a different experience, most likely, considering, you know, going from listening to Spotify on my headphones to listening to vinyl on my speaker setup. So, yes, two very different ways of listening. The second listen may almost be completely different, just based on how I feel. Even from there, I may have different thoughts, but already, like I said, I am very happy with the outcome of this mix, and I guess there's not a whole lot more else to say about it at this point. But if I can go quickly over why this album is so dear to me, just something about, I think the composition work, when I talked about how this album really touched me in a certain way, there's something about the way that they, you know, of course they had their heavy elements, but there was more to it than just the heavy elements. Like I was, you know, always a metalhead. I still am. Man, I didn't even think I was going to get into even heavier stuff compared to back then, you know, listening to full-on like death metal, grindcore, and all that kind of stuff. But nothing about that right now. I think this album, when getting into it, was kind of, it was kind of like a certain thing that piqued another aspect of interest in music that I realized, you know, the very melancholic, almost avant-garde kind of direction. And I realized that a lot of that stuff I kind of pushed aside, especially the avant-garde elements of music, for quite some time. I guess I never thought of Pain of Salvation to be that avant-garde because, like, well, they're considered prog metal. Not many people would consider them to be avant-garde, but, like, you know, I listen to some avant-garde bands now, and it's like, yeah, they definitely have a lot of elements that really, you know, show that they have more experimentation in their music in comparison to, you know, more traditional prog metal bands, you know, a la Dream Theater, Fates Warning, Psychotic Waltz, or whatever, you know. Although they do have their pretty unique elements, Pain of Salvation, you know, they have a different approach to it. The very melancholic feel that they got going on, you know, it's kind of like, it's sort of like the epic cheesiness of traditional prog metal, especially talking about Dream Theater, or, you know, power metal, for example, as well. But the way that it's presented, it's a lot more than just, you know, happy epic. It's sad epic. And that feeling, I find, like, if it's done properly, which every time this album brings that, it's just, it's, you know, it's heartbreaking. And something about that feeling, I just think in music in general, is absolutely beautiful. And the way that this album was able to blend the elements of melancholy, raw, aggressive, heavy metal, technicality of progressive metal. You know, they have, you know, instrumental sections as well. Not very many of them, but when it does, it rocks. And, you know, that was something that I loved about Dream Theater. And lo and behold, I heard this album, they had the instrumentals. That was another thing that grabbed me too. And obviously can't go wrong with Daniel Gildenlow's vocals. That's just basically the icing on the cake at this point. It's his vocal range, like this album even is probably, I would say, his best performance as well. Some of the things that he does in this album just really brings in the emotion that I don't think any other singer could bring to an album like that. So yeah, and the way that his voice was projected in this album as well was definitely a lot clearer. I guess that was another thing I was worried about with the mix of this, if it was going to be too clear for me to like feel like it's, you know, it's gonna take away, I guess, the feel of the album. But no, I think the feel is still there. It's definitely still there. And yeah, I don't even know if this is like a congrats. Well, yeah, I guess it's a congrats to Pontus Lindmark on achieving a success of what this album came out to be. I thank you for doing this for me and all the other fans who were looking very much forward to this album. And of course, thanks to Daniel and the band Pain of Salvation for even creating this album in the first place, as it's changed my life. And I cannot be any more thankful for a day like today, for me to be able to have gotten to hear this album in a brand new life, brand new way of hearing it. Just wow, something else. So yeah, I guess not much more I can go on and say about it. Man, it's 12 minutes. I almost thought I was gonna go on a bit longer, but I don't think I should at this point. But I think I've pretty much covered as much as I could and need to cover, pretty much, comparing the old and the new mix, composition, my favorite elements. And I mean, the album says for itself, it is the perfect element. And I could arguably say it's my all-time favorite album, but I still I still can't decide. I'm stuck between this album and Metropolis Part 2 by Dream Theater, and I think it's for different reasons. I think what it is that I think because the Perfect Element one is kind of like, it's a more mature album, and I could probably go on and say that this is an album I just think is more well thought out, unique, you know, just all the elements that could make more critics argue, say that this is just a superior album in ways that you know, that makes the album just a strong listen. You know, like, it's a very smart record. The lyrics are thought-provoking, and just, you know, there's just a lot about this that's just, you know, it's a perfect album. And with Metropolis Part 2, it's much more like, for me, it's just like, you know, it's a much more fun album. It's one that, you know, a lot of good riffs, and, you know, a pretty, you know, a little more, well, I wouldn't say straightforward, but, you know, it's an easy listening album. It's just something about it that, like, it does also have some pretty melancholic moments, just not quite up to par with what the Perfect Element provides, but it's still a very versatile listen as well. It's just, even for what that album is just absolutely perfect, and was the first album to really properly introduce me to bands like such. So I have to give that album credit for what it is, and with that reason, I honestly may never have a #1 favorite. I think it's just gonna remain as a tie between those two. And yeah, I guess that will be my speech now. As I was saying 2 minutes ago, I would end my review, and here I am going on doing comparisons. I'll just end it at the 15-minute mark at this point. And yeah, that's pretty much that. All right, well, thank you guys very much for watching, and hope that I didn't bore you with my words and my I apologize because it is also like I think 3 in the morning right now, so I got a little carried away in wanting to listen to this and whatnot. So yep, I will leave it at that, and you guys have a good day.